Well, good evening and welcome back to Sunday evening devotions. You know, when you see a garden like this, you know that a lot of preparation went into it. It didn't just spring up this way. It's the beauty of God's creation. He kind of gives us the raw materials, and He's given people the ability to take things and organize them and prepare them. It takes a lot of prep. Well, that's kind of our story tonight as we think about the story of Joseph. And really, again, we see that the focus on Scripture isn't so much about Joseph as a person. He's the person that God is using. But in these chapters 39 to 41, we have Joseph in Egypt. And what God is doing is revealing Himself through Joseph. You may recall the story in a brief kind of an overview way tonight, that he was sold into slavery by his brothers. He became the slave of Potiphar, the captain of the guard. God blessed his labors and work, so God was working through him. Potiphar recognized that and made him steward of all that he had, and he didn't hold anything back from him. Well, the temptations often come in this world when we're given success, and Potiphar's wife wanted Joseph. He was a young man, he was handsome, he had access to everything, and Joseph reminded her, well, I can't do that. My master has trusted me, and to be with you, to take you, would be a violation of that trust, and he told her it would be a sin against God. So Joseph was witnessing to her of the morality, the moral standards of God. Well, she got angry about that, being rejected, told her husband a lie instead of that Joseph was after her, rather than a real fact that she was after him. So Potiphar's anger was aroused and threw Joseph in prison. And often it happens that way when we stand for God. We are abused, we are persecuted, and it was in Joseph's case. And again, we begin to see this Christ-likeness in Joseph. He was the revelation of God to people, and he's rejected. So he's in prison, but God doesn't forget him. He blesses Joseph, and the prison work is given to Joseph's hands, and he, again, is prospering there. Well, in the course of time, the Pharaoh's butler and baker end up offending the Pharaoh, and they are put in the same prison. And interesting enough, you find in chapter 40 that Potiphar, the captain of the guard, is the one in charge of the prison. So Potiphar still is with Joseph in all this. And the two men, the butler and the baker, have these dreams. They're concerned. Joseph asks about them. He interprets the dreams, and you remember the story. The one gets a reprieve, and the one is put to death. So Joseph asks the butler, who is restored to his office, and that he remembered Joseph. Well, the butler forgets, right? Because the butler doesn't remind Pharaoh of his problems. But then in the course of 2 years, Pharaoh has dreams, and no one can answer the dreams. And then the butler remembers. Well, now it's to his benefit, you see, to remember Joseph, and he does. And you see again how God is using these things. He's working through these difficulties, preparing Joseph. So Joseph is called to the Pharaoh. Joseph interprets the dream, and of course it's the 7 years of plenty followed by the 7 years of famine. Pharaoh is impressed. He puts Joseph in charge of all that he has to take care of these things, and so it goes forward. Well, then what happens? Well, the time opens up. Joseph is taking care of Egypt. God blesses him, and Pharaoh gives him a wife, and he's again, there's a temptation here, right? He's given a wife from the priest of On, the highest priestly caste in Egypt, and then God gives him sons. And so Joseph, though, does not forget. He names his sons after God's work in his life in giving him comfort and fruitfulness. What all this has to do with our garden? Well, God is laying the foundation. God is doing a preparation work because God has sent Joseph to Egypt to prepare to bring Joseph's family, Jacob's family, the people of the promise, into Egypt, because they are being connected with the Canaanites, and God needs to keep them separate. And the interesting thing is that the name that Pharaoh gives Joseph, he calls him Zaphanath Pa'aniah, which really means redeemer and the one who gives life. Well, Joseph was going to preserve life. He is going to be the redeemer of God's people. He's a picture of Jesus again, and what Christ has done for us. He came. God had prepared the world for Christ. And he often, it's just he uses us in our lives. And the world rejected Christ, but Christ accomplished the work. And that's our hope. Well, that's good news. Good night.